Welcome back. It is February the 4th of 2022, the end of the week for the stock market. So we're going to take a look at stock markets and cryptocurrencies and see what's going on. I hope you've enjoyed a couple of the interviews that we've had this week. I'm going to have another interview next week with one of the brightest minds in the space. He's a hedge fund manager. They just launched a new fund, a metaverse fund. So we're going to talk all things cryptocurrency, metaverse next week. That'll be a fascinating interview. Metaverse is one of the areas where there is a lot of potential opportunity. A lot of capital is flowing into the metaverse space. A lot of talent is flowing into the metaverse space. And I think we have just scratched the surface of the potential. That's where I see some of the biggest potential in crypto coming down the line is in metaverse, gaming, and DeFi. I think are big areas of opportunity for crypto. So let's take a look at the markets, see what we have going on today. So markets were kind of up and down a little bit today, showed a little bit of strength going into the close for the NASDAQ. Amazon carried the day there. Facebook is bouncing off of a little local bottom. We'll see what happens there. We'll take a look at that in a minute. S&P up 0.5%. The Dow ended up down when it was up about 1% earlier today, probably about 3 o'clock. So typical volatility in the stock markets started out throughout the day, up and down all day long. And of course, the talk of the town today is Bitcoin. Bitcoin, this is on the hourly chart, had a big day today. I think overall today, let's see where Bitcoin started. Overall today, Bitcoin ended up probably about 10% on the day, I think, at one point. Yeah, close to it, about 9%. It's pulling back a little bit here. We have the little Bitcoin candy cane pattern going on. So we'll have to see how Bitcoin holds up through the weekend. It has broken the trend line that everybody's been following with this recent downtrend here. It's broken that trend line. Of course, we've seen this movie before since Bitcoin's been kind of rattling in this ladder down. So what Bitcoin needs to do is it needs to close above 40,000 and continue on to keep this pattern alive and to continue moving onward and upward towards that retracement that we're looking for, so that hopefully that will trigger the altcoins next, and we can get on with this cycle and see where we're going to go from there. If we look at the daily, you can see what's interesting. We've been talking about this little area of consolidation here, getting ready for the retrace to test that bottom again and see where we go. If we go back up into this cycle for a new high, or if we break down and test some of these macro lows. And this little pump here is very similar to what we had over here back in June, right before we had a little drop, and then ultimately found the bottom before we moved on to that retrace. So that could be kind of what we're doing here. And that was a movement over a couple of days of about 33%. So, we've been in this downtrend. We've had a lot of pressure on Bitcoin over the last couple of weeks. I think this is the highest level Bitcoin's been in a couple of weeks. But remember, back over here in June, July, during this area, and I did a lot of videos back here talking about this range. This was a phenomenal range to be trading right here because Bitcoin was bouncing anywhere between the lows of 30 to the highs of 42,000. That's a huge range to bounce around. Then it started settling in from lows of 33 to 41, kind of where we're at right now, 33 to 41, kind of in this range. Had a little pop right here. This pop was about 20%, just to bring it all into perspective. So this move right here on June 13th was a 18% move from 34,000 to 41,200. Then it dropped. And let's look at that drop. That was a 25% drop, bounced a little bit, ultimately found the bottom, moved on to the retrace. So this move here could be kind of setting the table to kind of figure out where the bottom is going to be as we roll over, bounce, and then move into that retrace to see if there's going to be continuation, or if it's going to retrace to that typical level that Bitcoin retraces to. You can go back in the history of Bitcoin. We'll look at that in a minute, where it typically after sell-offs retraces, to the 0.5 to the 0.618 retracement levels. And basically those are percentages. So typically when Bitcoin drops, it'll retrace to about 50% to 60% of the value of where it was. And that's generally what that means, kind of like you see over here, how this retraced here. So that's the idea. And this could be a lot of short squeezing here, a lot of shorts getting liquidated. And of course, after you liquidate the shorts, you liquidate the longs and you drop back down, because a lot of people are going long now and a lot of people are going short here. To me, this is not an area to be going short. Just way too much structure to get through. I mean, this is a huge, huge area of major market structural support. We've talked about that $30,000 level. But like I said, trading over there in June from 32 to the $42,000 level. And that's, we're in that $36,000 to $41,000 range now. So we'll have to see what happens. But this is not an area you want to be shorting, not when the market looks like this. We've had several days of price rising. You might get a little drop, going to hunt some stops down low, hunt some stops up high. But in general, this is just so much structure to get through on the first try. That's where I'm talking about this retracement. Once we bounce back, and if we reject into those Fibonacci levels and do not get through them to go, set a new all-time high and break this 69 level, which again, that's your next major market structure. So your major market structure low is 30, tons of support, buyers supporting price there. And up here, 69,000 is your resistance, sellers up in this area. A lot of people that got caught in here are going to want to sell when you get back to that 69 level. I know a lot of people, I think they say, I think the statistics are 70% of the people in crypto entered in the last year. I know a lot of people reach out to me that said they bought in these upper levels, and we'll get back there. We just don't know when, how long it's going to take, and we don't know where we're going to go from there until we get there. So, but we will get there eventually. And I think a lot of people will sell when we get there. So there's going to be a lot of pressure up here. This is another major market structural area up in here, and a lot of resistance to get through before we get there. But like you saw here, Bitcoin can blast right through it, just like it did right here. So we'll just have to see how all of that plays out. So a couple of things to take a look at when we start thinking about where Bitcoin is going. And something that's interesting, when you look at the Gaussian channel in terms of what's happening, this is the one-day Gaussian channel here, and you can see these areas where we're above the Gaussian channel. This is on the one day. We're in good shape, but once you enter it, it tends to draw it down below. We break through it. You can kind of see that price action and what happens when we're in and out of the Gaussian channel. But let's look at the weekly Gaussian channel and kind of look at where we're at right here, because what's happened is the midline of the Gaussian channel, we've fallen below that, and now we're working our way back up to that mid-level. And let's take a look at what's happened in the past whenever we've done that. So in the past, when Bitcoin has fallen into the Gaussian channel, fallen below that midline of the Gaussian and come back up and breaks through it, then it can generally get out of that channel. But if it falls down and doesn't stay above it, then it can fall down below again for a longer period of time. Again, that midline is the key, where it fell below here. This is the back in 2018, fell below, broke up just briefly, and then went back down. And of course, this is the weekly price chart here. And then again, back here in 2014, fell below the channel and stayed below it for quite some time. So that midline of the channel is the key. And, that's a good little chunk of time that once we've entered the channel, typically we'll stay in it for a couple of months. It looks like Bitcoin, when you go back and look at past price cycles, generally it stays in the channel for a couple of months. And right now, Bitcoin has been in the channel for about 5 weeks right now. So a little bit around a month so far that we've been in that channel. So we'll just have to see how that shakes out and what we can expect moving forward, and whether or not price can recover. So again, what we're looking for is a close above 40,000 on the daily right now. So we are hovering in that range. We got Bitcoin got rejected at the $41,000 level, didn't quite make it above. But if Bitcoin can close right here where it's at and then bounce, and again, we had that little trend line. Let's look at the 4 hour here. We had the trend that we were looking at, Bitcoin broke out. So if it can back test and continue on, then we can work to that retrace. But this, again, may very well have been a short liquidation, and Bitcoin could very well come back down into this range, trade sideways to down a little bit, touch, and then go off into that retracement before we come back and retest this bottom. And if that holds, then we will be off to an all-time high. Again, to test this region and see if we can set a new all-time high into a normal extension level that we would expect. And we'll have to take a look at that when we get a little further along down the road. And it's really interesting today with, obviously, we watched the dollar where Bitcoin is up, dollar was down today, right in this area while Bitcoin was up. Bitcoin starts dropping a little bit, dollar came up. So dollar's been kind of up and down. And if we look at the major indexes on the day, the Dow Jones, if we look at this hourly and how it all started out, this morning we started out a little bit down, then it bounced up, came back down in the afternoon. So we lost our strength in the afternoon, kind of putting a little bit of a trend here on the Dow Jones. The NASDAQ, kind of the same thing, a little bit of a drop with a bounce, and S&P kind of followed the same price action. So what markets are doing right now are settling in and trying to find a consistent range until we get more clarity out of the Fed and the economy, and to see what direction we're going to be heading, what the Fed's ultimately going to do. The job reports came out today. Obviously, leisure and hospitality is where the bulk of the jobs were created, as restaurants and hotels and travel destinations get open and bring more people back on the payroll. So we added 450,000 jobs last month. So that was a good thing. I think we're going to see more and more people come back to work and re-enter the workforce. So what does that mean for the markets, and what does that mean for the Fed? So we'll have to wait and see. It's a little early yet. The markets are kind of, trying to stabilize a little bit until we get to the next Fed meeting and get some clarity and direction from the Fed. Some of the Fed board members are kind of expressing their opinions, and those opinions will change as we get closer based on the macroeconomic climate. So we still have the Russia situation to keep an eye on that could impact and affect markets. If you're short-term trading, these things are going to affect you and impact you. If you're long-term, then you're long-term, and you'll just have to make your own decisions as you go along in terms of when you're going to enter and exit if you're a long-term investor. But if you're swing trading, day trading, and you're doing lower time frames to mid time frames, then these events are what you want to keep an eye on, because they create volatility in the market, which is where you make your money as a trader, buying low, selling high on the swings. So we want to watch the potential conflict with Russia and Ukraine, see how that shakes out. And then with the jobs report, the one thing that the Fed said that the market still hasn't fully digested was we have a lot of room to raise rates given the strength of the economy. And when you're adding jobs, that's sending a signal to the Fed that the economy is strong and that things are healthy and they can raise rates even more and more often. So the markets aren't going to like to see that talk come out of the Fed. If the Fed starts recognizing that we're adding jobs, that the economy's strong, they have to fight inflation. They have to come out a little stronger to keep that under control, because if we add more jobs and the economy continues to flourish, then you really get into a problem with inflation becoming a double-edged sword. So it's a tricky thing for the Fed. If they raise rates too much, it can affect markets, values of markets, which is people's wealth. It can affect values of real estate, which is individual wealth. And that affects a whole lot of things throughout the economy. If they don't do anything, then markets continue to thrive, and we continue to see inflation, and things just get even worse. And that can lead to like a 2008, 2009 systemic event that they just can't control. So it's a tricky situation for the Fed. Markets are watching, they're reacting. And we'll just have to wait and see as we get closer to the end of February what they're going to do. But right now, interesting day, a lot of fun to watch Bitcoin pump like it did. Everybody's getting excited. You're starting to see the $100,000 banners come out again. So we'll have to watch and see what happens over the weekend. If that was just a short squeeze and short liquidation, I think it was about $100 million worth of shorts that were liquidated on Bitcoin earlier today. We'll have to see what the end results of that were, and if we're going to have a long liquidation now going back the other direction, and a little bit of a balancing act while we continue to range and wait for Bitcoin to begin the rebound retracement to see if we're going to set new highs or if we're going to roll over and test those macro lows. So that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm seeing. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.